The blood of the human prisoner still stained Kara's hands when her father struck her across the face hard enough to split her lip. "You disgrace this clan," War Chief Yorick bellowed, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the war chamber. "You were ordered to execute the spy, not heal his wounds and set him free." Kara steadied herself, tasting copper as she met her father's furious gaze. Around them, the council of warriors watched with hard eyes, their tusks glinting in the torchlight. She had known this moment would come the instant she cut the prisoner's bonds and pointed him toward the mountain pass, away from Orc territory. She had known, and she had done it anyway. "He was no spy," she said quietly. "He was a shepherd who wandered too far from his flock. He had no weapons, no maps, nothing but terror in his eyes when I found him." "He was human," her mother Shara hissed from the shadows. "That is enough." "Is it?" Kara turned to face the assembled warriors. "When did we become the monsters they say we are? When did mercy become weakness?" The crack of her father's hand against stone silenced her. "You will not speak of weakness when you embody it. For 3 generations, our clan has held this borderland against human encroachment. We have survived because we are strong, because we are feared. And now my own daughter, my only child, reveals herself to be soft." Kara's jaw tightened. She was not soft. She had trained alongside the warriors since childhood, had earned her place in the hunting parties, had tracked elk through winter snows and faced down a rabid bear with nothing but a spear. But she had also seen the shepherd's face, young and terrified, and something in her had refused to end his life for the crime of being born human. "If strength requires cruelty to the helpless, then I want no part of it," she said. The words hung in the air like a blade. Her father's expression shifted from rage to something colder, more final. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Then you have no part of this clan. Kara, daughter of Yorick, you are cast out. You will take nothing but the clothes you wear and the shame you have earned. If you are found on our lands after sunrise, you will be killed as a traitor. Go, live among the humans you love so much and see how they welcome you." The chamber remained silent as Kara looked from face to face, searching for any sign of protest, any voice raised in her defense. She found none. Even Throck, who had trained beside her since they were children, looked away. Only her younger cousin Mara met her eyes, and there was something like pity in her gaze. Kara straightened her shoulders and walked toward the entrance. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not here, not now. "Kara." Her mother's voice stopped her at the threshold. Kara turned, hope flickering despite everything. Shara's face was carved from stone. "You were the greatest disappointment of my life." The words landed like physical blows, but Kara forced herself to nod once before stepping out into the night. Behind her, the great wooden doors of the clan hall slammed shut with a finality that echoed through her bones. The mountain air was cold against her skin, as she descended the rocky path away from the only home she had ever known. She wore simple leather breeches and a tunic, boots that were already wearing thin, and nothing else. No pack, no food, no weapons beyond the small knife at her belt that they had apparently deemed too insignificant to confiscate. As she walked through the darkness, the enormity of what had just happened began to settle over her. She had no clan, no family, no purpose. She was utterly alone in a world that hated her kind almost as much as her kind hated it. The night stretched on, and Kara kept moving, putting distance between herself and the clan lands. When dawn broke pale and gray over the mountains, she found herself in territory she recognized only vaguely from hunting expeditions. Rolling hills covered in long grass, stands of oak and pine, and in the distance, the thin line of smoke rising from what had to be human habitation. Her first instinct was to avoid it. But as the morning wore on and her stomach began to cramp with hunger, she realized she had little choice. She knew how to hunt, but she had no bow, no spear, nothing but that small knife. She could forage, but it was early spring and there was little ready to harvest. She would have to risk approaching the humans. By midday, Kara had tracked the smoke to a small farmstead nestled in a valley between two hills. From her vantage point in the tree line, she observed the place carefully. A modest house with a thatched roof, a barn that had seen better years, a chicken coop, and fields that were freshly plowed and awaiting planting. A single figure moved among the furrows, bent over his work, just one person. That was as good as she could hope for. Kara waited until the sun began its descent toward the western hills, watching the farmer's patterns. He worked steadily, methodically, stopping occasionally to wipe his brow or adjust something in the field. He was tall for a human, broad-shouldered, with dark hair tied back from his face. Even from this distance, she could see the careful precision of his movements, the practiced ease of someone who had done this work his entire life. When twilight began to settle, the farmer finally gathered his tools and headed toward the barn. Kara made her decision. She would wait until full dark, then approach the house and see if there was any food left accessible. She was not above stealing to survive, though the thought sat uncomfortably in her chest. But before she could move from her hiding spot, the farmer emerged from the barn carrying a bucket of what looked like feed for the chickens. As he scattered it, he suddenly went still, his head tilting like he had heard something. Then he turned and looked directly at the tree line where Kara crouched. "I know you are out there," he called. His voice was steady, not aggressive, but not welcoming either. "I have known since this morning. If you mean to rob me, you should know I have little worth taking. If you mean me harm, you should know I am not as easy to kill as I look." Kara's heart hammered in her chest. She could run. She probably should run. But something in his tone, the lack of fear or hatred, made her hesitate. "I mean no harm," she called back, her voice rougher than his. "I am hungry, that is all." A long pause. "Show yourself," this was it. The moment he saw what she was, he would either attack or run for help. Either way, she would have to flee again. But Kara found she was tired of running, tired of hiding. She had been cast out for showing mercy. She might as well see if any existed in the world beyond her clan. She stood and walked out of the shadows into the fading light. The farmer went very still as she approached. She watched his eyes widen, saw his hand tighten on the bucket handle. He was younger than she had thought, perhaps mid-20s, with a strong jaw and eyes that were a surprising shade of gray. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, old and white against his sun-browned skin. "You are an orc," he said unnecessarily. "I am." Kara stopped 20 paces away, keeping her hands visible and away from her knife. "My name is Kara. I am alone. I have no weapons beyond a small blade. I do not wish to fight you." He studied her for a long moment, and she could see him taking in details. Her empty hands, her worn clothing. The exhaustion that must be written across her features. "Orcs do not travel alone," he said finally, "and they do not beg humans for food." "I am no longer with my clan," Kara said, the words bitter in her mouth. "And I am not begging. I will work for food if you are willing." Another long silence. Then, impossibly, he nodded toward the house. "I was about to make supper. You may share it. Then we will discuss work." Kara stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You would invite an orc into your home." Something like amusement flickered across his face. "I just did." "Are you coming or not? I am hungry even if you are not." He turned and walked toward the house as if he had not just done something completely unprecedented in the history of human and orc relations. Kara stood frozen for a moment before her feet carried her forward, following this strange human who seemed to have no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. The inside of the house was simple but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with jars and simple dishes. A doorway led to what she assumed was a sleeping area. The farmer set about building up the fire and pulling out bread, cheese, and dried meat. "My name is Yorick Dalton," he said as he worked. "I have owned this farm for 3 years. Before that, I was a soldier." That explained the scar, the lack of fear, the assessing way he had looked at her. "You fought orcs," Kara said. "I did." He sliced the bread with steady hands. "For 5 years I fought in the border wars, killed my share of your kind, saw my share of friends killed by them." Kara tensed, her hand drifting toward her knife. Yorick noticed and shook his head. "I am telling you this so you know where I stand. I left that life because I was tired of killing. I came here to grow things instead of destroying them. But I am not naive and I am not defenseless. If you betray my hospitality, you will regret it." "Understood," Kara said quietly. He nodded and set the food on the table, then poured water from a pitcher into 2 cups. "Sit." They ate in silence for several minutes. The bread was fresh, the cheese sharp and good, the dried meat salty and satisfying. Kara had not realized how hungry she was until the food touched her tongue. She forced herself to eat slowly with dignity, but it took considerable effort. "Why did your clan cast you out?" Yorick asked finally. Kara set down the bread she had been eating, meeting his eyes. "I showed mercy to a human prisoner. I was ordered to execute him. Instead, I freed him." Yorick's eyebrows rose. "That is all. That is everything." "Mercy to humans is seen as the deepest betrayal among my people. We have fought for generations over these lands. There is too much blood, too much hatred." "I know," Yorick said quietly. "I helped spill some of that blood." They sat with that truth between them. 2 people on opposite sides of a war neither had chosen, sharing a meal in the gathering darkness. "Why did you do it?" Yorick asked. "Free the prisoner, I mean." Kara considered the question. He was young, terrified. He had wandered into our territory by accident while chasing a lost sheep. He was no threat. Killing him would have served no purpose except to add another death to the pile. She paused. "I looked at him and saw someone who wanted to live. I could not be the one to take that from him." Yorick nodded slowly. "And now you are here." "Now I am here," Kara agreed, cast out, alone and uncertain what comes next. What do you want to come next? The question caught her off guard. What did she want? She had spent the last day simply trying to survive, putting one foot in front of the other. She had not allowed herself to think beyond that. "I do not know," she admitted. "To live, I suppose, to find some purpose beyond fighting and hating." Yorick drained his cup and set it down with a soft thunk. "I need help with the farm. Spring planting is upon me, and there is more work than one person can manage. You say you will work for food. I am willing to offer food and shelter in exchange for honest labor. Nothing permanent, but until you figure out what comes next." Kara studied him, searching for the trap, the hidden cost. "Why would you do this?" "Because I need the help," Yorick said simply. "And because I know what it is like to be cast out from the only life you knew. When I left the army, many of my former brothers in arms saw me as a coward or a traitor. I came here with nothing and had to build everything from the ground up. Someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. Perhaps it is time I paid that forward." It was the most words he had spoken at once, and Kara heard the truth in them. This man had suffered too. He understood, at least in part. "I accept," she said. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. The work is hard and the hours are long. And if anyone discovers I am harboring an orc, there will be trouble. You will need to stay out of sight when I go into the village for supplies." "I understand." Yorick stood and gestured toward the door that led to the sleeping area. There is a small loft above the barn with clean straw and blankets. It will be warmer than sleeping outside. We start at dawn. That night, Kara lay in the barn loft, surrounded by the warm smell of hay and the gentle sounds of the animals below. Through a gap in the boards, she could see the house, a single window glowing with firelight. Yorick Dalton was a puzzle she could not yet solve. A soldier who had become a farmer. A human who showed kindness to an orc. She did not trust it yet, not fully. But for the first time since her father had struck her, since the clan doors had slammed shut behind her, Kara felt something other than despair. She felt the smallest flicker of hope. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that was both strange and oddly comforting. Kara rose with the dawn, as she always had, but instead of weapons training or hunting, she followed Yorick into the fields. The work was backbreaking, plowing furrows, hauling stones from the soil, preparing the earth for planting. Her muscles ached in new ways, but she was strong, and she learned quickly. Yorick was a patient teacher, showing her how to guide the plow behind the old ox he kept for such work, how to recognize good soil from poor, how to space the rows for different crops. He spoke little while they worked, but when he did speak, it was with quiet authority. He knew this land, knew how to coax life from it. In the evenings they ate together at the rough wooden table. The meals were simple but filling, and slowly, conversation began to flow more easily between them. Yorick told her about his childhood in a village 2 days' ride to the south, about the older brother who had inherited the family farm, leaving Yorick to find his own way. He told her about the army, though his words grew sparse when he spoke of the war. Some things, Kara understood, were too painful to put into words. In turn, she told him about life in the clan, about the harsh beauty of the mountains, the fierce bonds between warriors, the strict codes that governed every aspect of existence. She told him about her training, about tracking deer through snow, about the night she stayed awake for 36 hours straight during her trial to earn her hunter's mark. "You miss it," Yorick observed one evening, perhaps a week after she had arrived. Kara considered this as she chewed the roasted vegetables he had prepared. "I miss parts of it. The certainty of knowing where you belong, what is expected of you, the strength that comes from being part of something larger than yourself." She paused. "But I do not miss the hatred. The constant preparation for violence, the way compassion was seen as weakness." "The army was like that too," Yorick said. "Everything was about being harder, tougher, more ruthless than the enemy. Any softness could get you killed, so we learned to bury it deep." He stared into his cup. "But it is still there underneath. The softness, the humanity, burying it does not make it disappear, it just makes you half a person." Kara looked at him with new understanding. "Is that why you left? Part of it?" "I also left because I realized I was killing people who were probably no different from me in the ways that mattered. Young men who had been told orcs were monsters. And I was killing orcs who had been told humans were demons. And none of it was changing anything except making widows and orphans on both sides. That is a dangerous thing to realize when you are a soldier," Kara said softly. "It is a dangerous thing to realize when you are anything," Yorick replied. "But once you see it, you cannot unsee it." As spring deepened, the farm began to transform. The fields that had been bare earth became rows of green shoots pushing up toward the sun. Kara learned to thin the plants, to water them during dry spells, to identify the weeds that threatened to choke them out. She learned to care for the chickens, gathering eggs each morning, and to milk the 2 goats Yorick kept for cheese and milk. The work was satisfying in a way she had not expected. Each day she could see the results of her labor. The plants grew taller, the animals grew fatter. The farm began to thrive under their combined efforts, but there were also moments of tension, reminders that the peace they had found was fragile. Twice, Yorick had to go into the village for supplies, and both times Kara hid in the barn loft, her heart pounding at every distant sound. The second time, he returned with news that made his expression grim. "There are rumors of orc raids further north," he said as they ate that evening. "Some of the villagers are talking about forming militia patrols, expanding them to include this area." Kara set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "I should leave. I am putting you at risk." "No," Yorick's voice was firm. "You have done nothing wrong. You are here peacefully, working honestly. I will not send you away because others are afraid." "Their fear is not irrational," Kara pointed out. "My people have attacked human settlements. I cannot blame them for wanting to defend themselves." "Maybe not. But I will not punish you for the actions of others. That is the same thinking that drives the cycle of violence in the first place." Kara studied him across the table, this human who continued to surprise her. "You are a stubborn man, Yorick Dalton." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "So I have been told." As the weeks passed, Kara began to notice small changes in how Yorick looked at her. The wariness that had been present in those first days had faded, replaced by something that looked almost like companionship. He laughed more readily at her dry observations about the chicken's stupidity, or the goat's determination to eat everything it was not supposed to. He showed her how to play a simple game with dice that he had learned in the army, and they spent several evenings locked in fierce competition that left them both grinning. And Kara found herself changing too. She caught herself watching the way Yorick's hands moved when he demonstrated a new technique, capable and sure. She noticed the way his hair curled slightly at his neck when it grew too long, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She found excuses to stand closer to him when they worked, to brush against his shoulder or hand when passing tools. This was dangerous territory, and she knew it. Orcs and humans did not form these kinds of bonds. It was forbidden by both societies, seen as the ultimate betrayal. And yet, she could not seem to stop herself from wanting to be near him, from cherishing the sound of his voice, from lying awake at night thinking about the way he had smiled at her that day. She was falling for him, and she had no idea what to do about it. The realization hit her fully one afternoon in late spring. They were working in the field, transplanting seedlings, and a sudden rainstorm blew in from the west. They ran for the barn, laughing as the rain soaked them through in seconds. Inside, they stood dripping on the straw-covered floor, and Yorick reached up to push his wet hair back from his face. And Kara was struck by how beautiful he was in that moment. Alive and laughing, and completely unaware of the effect he had on her. He caught her staring and his laughter faded, replaced by something more intense. For a long moment they stood there, the rain drumming on the roof above them, and Kara thought he might kiss her. She wanted him to. She wanted it so badly it ached. But instead, Yorick cleared his throat and stepped back. "We should change into dry clothes before we catch cold." The moment broke, and Kara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She climbed up to the loft while Yorick went to the house, and she changed with shaking hands, her heart still racing. This could not continue. She would have to leave soon before she did something foolish that would ruin the fragile peace they had built. But the thought of leaving, of never seeing Yorick again, was almost unbearable. That evening they were both subdued over dinner. The easy conversation that had developed between them faltered, replaced by long silences that felt heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Yorick set down his fork and looked at her directly. "Kara, I need to say something." Her heart climbed into her throat. "All right." "These past weeks, having you here, working alongside you, it has been good. Better than good. You have become important to me in a way I did not anticipate. He paused, seeming to struggle for words. I know this situation was meant to be temporary. You said you would stay until you figured out what comes next, but I find myself hoping that what comes next is staying here, with me. Kara stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Yorick, I am an orc. You are human. People on both sides would see this as a betrayal. I know that. Believe me, I have thought about little else for days now. He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. But I also know that I have never met anyone like you. You are strong, intelligent, compassionate, and brave enough to stand by your principles even when it costs you everything. I admire you, Kara. More than that, I have come to care for you deeply. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. Kara felt tears prick at her eyes, something she had not allowed herself since the night her clan cast her out. I care for you too, she whispered. More than I should, more than is wise. Then perhaps we can be unwise together, Yorick said, and he reached across the table to take her hand. His skin was warm against hers, his fingers calloused from work just like her own. Kara looked down at their joined hands, human and orc, and felt something settle in her chest that felt like coming home. I do not know how to do this, she admitted. I was raised to hate your kind, and now I find myself wanting to spend every moment with you. I do not know how to do this either, Yorick said, but I would like to try, if you are willing. Kara met his eyes and saw the same vulnerability she felt reflected back at her. This man who had been a soldier, who had seen the worst of both their peoples, was offering her not just shelter but something far more precious. He was offering her his heart. I am willing, she said. Yorick smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his entire face, and lifted her hand to press a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was gentle, reverent, and it sent warmth flooding through her entire body. They finished dinner with hands still clasped across the table, talking quietly about what this meant, what they wanted. It was agreed that they would continue as they had been for now, but with honesty between them about their feelings. The physical side of their relationship would develop slowly, at a pace they both felt comfortable with. And they would be careful, so careful, because the world was not ready for what they were building. But in that moment, in the small farmhouse with the fire crackling and their hands intertwined, the world outside did not matter. That night, before Kara climbed to the barn loft, Yorick pulled her into a gentle embrace. She stiffened at first, unused to such tenderness, but then relaxed into it, resting her cheek against his shoulder. He was only slightly taller than her, and their bodies fit together as if designed for this purpose. Sleep well, Kara, he murmured into her hair. Sleep well, Yorick, she replied. In the weeks that followed, their relationship deepened in small, precious ways. Yorick began finding excuses to touch her, a hand on her shoulder when she did good work, fingers brushing hers when passing tools. Kara reciprocated, her natural wariness slowly melting under the warmth of his affection. They shared their first real kiss on a warm evening in early summer. They had been working to repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm, and as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Yorick turned to her with that soft expression she had come to treasure. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice low. Kara nodded, not trusting her voice, and Yorick cupped her face gently in his calloused hands. He leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was sweet and careful, a question more than a demand. Kara felt her eyes flutter closed as she leaned into it, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. His lips were soft, and he tasted faintly of the mint he chewed after meals. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Yorick rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for a very long time," he confessed. "I am glad you finally did," Kara replied and kissed him again. Summer brought long days of work and longer evenings of growing intimacy. They talked about everything, sharing stories from their pasts, dreams for the future, fears that kept them awake at night. Yorick told her about the nightmares he still had sometimes, echoes of battles fought and friends lost. Kara told him about the loneliness of being different, of always feeling slightly apart even within her clan, of the relief and terror of finally acting on her own conscience. They also talked about the practicalities of their situation. Yorick went into the village less frequently, buying supplies in larger quantities to reduce his trips. When he did go, he was careful to act as he always had, to give no indication that anything had changed. The villagers knew him as a solitary man, a veteran who kept to himself, and he maintained that reputation. For her part, Kara developed a routine for hiding whenever strangers approached. Yorick had cleared out a small storage cellar beneath the house, and she could retreat there if needed, though thankfully it had not been necessary yet. They both knew this peace could not last forever. Eventually, someone would discover the truth. But they chose to treasure each day they had rather than live in fear of what might come. One evening in midsummer, as they sat outside watching fireflies dance over the fields, Yorick grew serious. "Kara, there is something I need to ask you." She turned to him, noting the tension in his shoulders. "What is it?" "Next week, there is a gathering in the village, a midsummer festival. People come from all the surrounding farms to celebrate the longest day of the year." He paused. "I always go, if only to maintain my connections with the community. But this year, it feels wrong to go and leave you here alone." "I will be fine," Kara said, though the thought of him being gone even for a day made her chest tight. "You should go. It would seem strange if you did not." "I know. But I wanted you to understand that I would rather be here with you." Kara leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "I know that. Go to your festival. I will keep the farm running in your absence." The day of the festival arrived bright and clear. Yorick left at dawn, dressed in his better clothes, and promised to return by nightfall. Kara watched him ride away on his old mare, then set about the daily chores with more vigor than necessary, trying to keep busy and not think about how much she missed him already. She was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when she heard horses approaching. Multiple horses. Her instincts screamed danger, and she dropped the pitchfork, moving quickly to the small window that looked out on the farmyard. 4 riders, all human men, all armed. They were not dressed like common villagers. They wore the leather armor and carried the weapons of militia or possibly soldiers. Kara's heart sank. This was what they had feared. She slipped quickly into the house and down into the cellar, pulling the trapdoor shut above her. The space was small and dark, barely large enough for her to crouch in, but it was well concealed. From above, she heard the sound of boots on the wooden floor, voices calling out. "No one here," one man said, his voice muffled by the floorboards. "Spread out, check the barn and the fields," another commanded. "We had reports of orc tracks near this area. If Dalton is harboring one, we will find the evidence." Kara's blood ran cold. Someone had seen her or seen signs of her presence, and now they were searching for proof. She heard them moving through the house, opening doors, overturning furniture. Then the sounds moved outside. She waited in the darkness, hardly daring to breathe, as footsteps stomped overhead and around the property. "Found something," a voice called from what sounded like the barn. "Fresh straw in the loft, arranged like a bedroll, and this." There was a pause, and Kara realized with horror that she had left her spare clothes in the loft. The clothes Yorick had given her, modified to fit her larger frame. "These are too big for Dalton," the first voice said. "And look at this. The stitching has been altered to accommodate someone broader in the shoulders. So he is harboring someone," the commanding voice said. "The question is who?" "Could be a deserter from one of the northern regiments," another man suggested. "Could be. Or it could be exactly what the scout reported. Orc tracks were found less than a mile from here, heading toward this farm." "I still do not believe Dalton would be that stupid," the first voice said. "He is a veteran. He knows what orcs are capable of. Then where is he now?" "Convenient that he is gone the one day we come to investigate. He is at the festival. Half the valley is at the festival. That is why we chose today to search properties in this area." The men continued to argue above her, and Kara realized that Yorick's absence might be the only thing saving her right now. If he had been here, they would have questioned him directly, and he was a terrible liar. She had seen that clearly in the way his face gave away his thoughts. But without him to interrogate, they only had circumstantial evidence. "We take the clothes," the commander finally decided, "and we post a watch on this property. When Dalton returns, we bring him in for questioning. If he is innocent, he will have explanations for what we found. If not, we will get the truth out of him." Kara's stomach dropped. They were going to arrest Yorick, because of her. Because he had shown her kindness, and now he would pay the price. She listened as the men left, but stayed in the cellar long after the sound of hoofbeats faded. Only when the sun was setting, and she was certain they were gone, did she emerge, stiff and aching from crouching in the confined space for hours. The house was a disaster. They had torn through everything, clearly looking for more evidence. In the barn, her makeshift bedding was gone, along with her spare clothes. And true to their word, when she carefully scouted the perimeter as darkness fell, she spotted a man sitting watch on the hill overlooking the farm. They were waiting for Yorick to return. Kara moved quickly, gathering the few supplies she could carry, her mind racing. She had to leave. If she was gone when Yorick returned, he could claim ignorance. He could say someone had been squatting in his barn without his knowledge, that he had been too busy with planting to notice. It would be thin, but it might be enough to save him from serious punishment. She was tying her bundle together when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. Yorick, returning from the festival. Kara ran to the door, intending to intercept him, to warn him, but she was too late. She heard shouts, saw torches flaring to life on the hill as the watcher signaled to others. Within moments, riders were converging on the farm from multiple directions. They had not left one watcher. They had left several, spread out and hidden. And now Yorick was riding straight into a trap. Kara burst from the house, running toward Yorick even as the riders closed in. She saw his face, saw the moment he spotted her, and understood what was happening. Horror and fear flashed across his features, but not, she noted, fear for himself. He was afraid for her. "Get back inside," he shouted. "Hide." But it was too late for hiding. The riders had seen her, seen the green skin and tusks that marked her as unmistakably orc. They surrounded them, weapons drawn, and the commander from earlier pushed his horse forward. "Yorick Dalton," he said, his voice cold with fury. "You are under arrest for harboring an enemy of humanity, and you, orc, are under arrest for trespassing on human lands. You will both come with us." Yorick dismounted slowly, his hands raised. "She is no enemy. She has been working here peacefully, harming no one." Silence. "You will have your chance to explain yourself to the magistrate. Bind them both." Two of the men dismounted, approaching with rope. Kara's every instinct screamed at her to fight, to run, but she looked at Yorick and saw him subtly shake his head. Fighting would only make things worse, would give them justification to use lethal force. She allowed them to bind her hands, though the ropes bit into her wrists. Beside her, Yorick received the same treatment. Then they were hauled onto horses, one rider holding each of them, and the group set off into the night. They rode for what felt like hours, though it was probably less, arriving at the village as the moon rose high overhead. The streets were still crowded with festival goers, and the sight of Yorick and an orc prisoner caused an immediate commotion. People shouted, some in fear, others in anger. Children were hustled inside. Men ran to grab weapons. They were taken to a building at the center of the village, a solid stone structure that served as both meeting hall and jail. Inside, they were separated. Kara was shoved into a cell with iron bars, her hands still bound. Through the walls, she could hear Yorick shouting, demanding to know what she was being charged with, insisting that she had committed no crime. His protests were met with harsh laughter and the sound of a door slamming. Kara sank onto the cold stone bench that ran along one wall of the cell, her mind racing. This was bad, worse than bad. At best, they would both be imprisoned. At worst, they would be executed as traitors, and it was all her fault. Yorick had offered her kindness, and she had repaid him with ruin. The night stretched on, marked by the sounds of angry voices outside the jail. Kara could hear the crowd growing, hear the calls for justice, for punishment. Fear coiled in her stomach, but beneath it was a deeper ache. If this was the end, she would never get to tell Yorick that the months on his farm had been the happiest of her life. That he had shown her what it meant to be truly seen and valued for who she was, not what she was supposed to be. She would never get to tell him she loved him. Dawn came gray and cold, and with it came the sound of footsteps approaching her cell. The commander from the previous night appeared, along with an older man in fine robes who could only be the magistrate. "I am Magistrate Harrow," the older man said, studying her through the bars with undisguised distaste. "You are charged with trespassing on human lands and with corrupting a citizen of this realm. How do you plead?" Kara stood, meeting his eyes steadily. "I am guilty of being on human lands, though I came here seeking only to survive, not to cause harm, but I have corrupted no one. Yorick Dalton made his own choice to offer me shelter and work. If there is blame to be assigned, it falls on me, not him." "A noble sentiment," Harrow said dryly. "But the law is clear. Aiding an orc is treason. Dalton will face punishment for his crime." "What punishment?" "That depends on his testimony. If he claims you coerced or threatened him, he may receive leniency. If he admits to helping you willingly, the punishment will be more severe." Kara's hands clenched into fists. He did nothing wrong. He simply showed mercy to someone in need. Since when is compassion a crime? Since the someone in question is a member of a race that has killed hundreds of our people, the commander snapped. "Your kind are monsters. They do not deserve mercy." "My kind," Kara said slowly, "cast me out for showing mercy to one of yours. It seems both our peoples are determined to perpetuate hatred, no matter the cost." The magistrate's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or respect, but it was gone quickly. "Be that as it may, the law is the law. You will both be tried this afternoon. Prepare yourself." They left, and Kara was alone again with her fear and her guilt. She paced the small cell, her mind working frantically. There had to be something she could do, some way to save Yorick from paying the price for her presence. When they came for her that afternoon, she was ready. They bound her hands again and led her out into the meeting hall, which had been rearranged to serve as a courtroom. Benches were packed with villagers, all of them staring at her with expressions ranging from fear to outright hatred. At the front of the room, Magistrate Harrow sat at a raised desk, with the commander and several other officials flanking him, and off to the side, also bound, was Yorick. Their eyes met across the room, and Kara felt her heart clench. He looked exhausted, with a fresh bruise darkening his left cheek, but his expression was fierce and unrepentant. The magistrate called the proceedings to order, and the charges were read aloud. Kara listened with half an ear, her attention focused on Yorick. When it came time for him to give his testimony, she held her breath. "Yorick Dalton," Harrow said, "you are charged with willingly harboring an orc on your property, providing her with shelter and food, and engaging in treasonous fraternization with an enemy of humanity. What is your defense?" Yorick stood, his bound hands steady. "I have no defense because I do not recognize the charges as valid. Kara is not an enemy. She is a person who was cast out by her own people for refusing to kill an innocent human. When she came to me hungry and alone, I chose to help her because it was the right thing to do. We have worked side by side for months, and she has been nothing but honest and hardworking. If that is treason, then I am guilty as charged." A murmur ran through the crowd, angry and disbelieving. The magistrate held up a hand for silence. "You admit, then, that you harbored her willingly, that she did not force or coerce you?" "I admit it freely," Yorick said, "and I would do it again." Kara wanted to scream at him to stop, to save himself, but before she could speak, the magistrate turned to her. "And you, orc, what is your testimony?" Kara stood on shaking legs. This was her chance. "Magistrate, I wish to change my plea. I am guilty of all charges, including coercing Yorick Dalton. When I arrived at his farm, I threatened him with violence if he did not shelter me. He was afraid for his life and had no choice but to comply. Everything he told you is a lie designed to protect himself from my wrath." The crowd erupted in shouts, and Yorick's voice rose above them all. "That is not true. Kara, what are you doing?" Kara ignored him, keeping her eyes on the magistrate. "I am stronger than any human. Yorick knew that if he refused me or tried to turn me in, I would kill him. He is innocent. I am the only guilty party here." "Lies," Yorick shouted, struggling against the guards who held him. "She is lying to protect me. Magistrate, do not listen to her." Silence. Harrow's voice cracked like a whip. He stared at both of them, his expression unreadable. "This is highly irregular. One of you is lying, but which one?" "I am telling the truth," Kara said desperately. "Yorick is a good man who was forced into an impossible situation. He does not deserve punishment for being a victim." "She is the one telling lies," Yorick countered. "Magistrate, I have lived in this valley for 3 years. I have served this kingdom honorably as a soldier. I am asking you to believe me when I say that I made my choice freely, and I stand by it. Kara is not a monster. She is a person, just like any of us, and she deserves to be treated with the same dignity and respect we would grant to any other person." The room fell silent at his words. Kara stared at Yorick, tears streaming down her face now, because even in the face of punishment and possible death, he was defending her. He was choosing her. The magistrate leaned back in his chair, studying them both. Finally, he spoke. "I have presided over many trials in my years, but I have never seen anything quite like this. 2 people, both willing to take the full blame to save the other. It speaks to a bond that goes beyond simple coercion or even friendship." He paused. "Tell me, Dalton, what exactly is the nature of your relationship with this orc?" Yorick straightened, and when he spoke, his voice rang clear and strong through the hall. "I love her. Kara is my partner, my companion, and if she would have me, I would wish her to be my wife." The crowd exploded. People shouted in outrage and disgust, some even in fear. The guards had to struggle to maintain order. Through it all, Kara stared at Yorick, hardly able to process what he had just said. Wife. He wanted her to be his wife. When the crowd finally quieted, the magistrate spoke again. You wish to marry an orc. I wish to marry Kara, Yorick corrected. The fact that she is an orc is irrelevant to me. I judge people by their character, not their race. And Kara has shown herself to be brave, kind, honorable, and worthy of love. Harrow turned to Kara. And you? Do you return these feelings? Kara found her voice, though it shook with emotion. I do. I love Yorick Dalton. He has been kinder to me than anyone in my entire life. He has shown me that there is more to existence than violence and hatred. If the price for that is my life, I will pay it gladly. But please, I am begging you, do not punish him for caring about me. The magistrate was silent for a long moment, his expression troubled. Finally, he stood. I need to confer with my advisors. The prisoners will be returned to their cells while we deliberate. The next hours were agony. Kara paced her cell, her mind replaying Yorick's words over and over. He wanted to marry her. Despite everything, despite the impossible gulf between their peoples, he had declared his love for her in front of an entire village of hostile witnesses. She had ruined him. Even if by some miracle they were both spared execution, his reputation was destroyed. The village would never accept him again. He had sacrificed everything for her. When the guards finally came to retrieve her, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the barred window. She was led back into the meeting hall where Yorick was already waiting. Their eyes met, and she saw no regret in his face, only determination. The magistrate took his seat and called for order. The crowd, if anything, was larger than before, packed so tightly that people stood along the walls. This case has forced me to consider questions of law and morality that I confess I am not fully equipped to answer, Harrow began. The letter of the law is clear. Harboring an orc is treason. The punishment is death. Kara felt her knees weaken but forced herself to remain standing. However, the magistrate continued, the spirit of the law exists to protect our people from those who would do us harm. After extensive questioning of Yorick Dalton, and after reviewing the evidence, I find no indication that this orc, Kara, has caused any harm to anyone. Indeed, the evidence suggests that she was cast out by her own people specifically for refusing to harm a human. A murmur ran through the crowd. Harrow raised a hand for silence. Furthermore, I must consider the character of Yorick Dalton. He is a decorated veteran who has served this kingdom with honor. His farm has been a model of productivity and good stewardship. His neighbors, when questioned, had nothing but positive things to say about him until this incident came to light. The magistrate paused, his gaze sweeping the room. I do not believe that justice is served by executing two people whose only crime is caring for each other. However, I also cannot simply ignore the law. Kara's heart pounded. What was he saying? Therefore, I am offering a compromise. Yorick Dalton, you will be stripped of your land and exiled from this valley. You may not return on pain of death. As for you, Kara, you will be escorted to the border of human lands and released. What becomes of you after that is not our concern. But if you are ever found on human land again, the sentence will be immediate execution. No. Yorick's voice cut through the hall. You cannot take my farm. I have put 3 years of work into that land. You should have thought of that before you chose to harbor an orc, Harrow said coldly. This is my final ruling. You both have until dawn to leave the valley. Be grateful that I am allowing you to leave with your lives. The guards moved forward to remove them, but Kara spoke up, her voice carrying across the room. Magistrate, I have a request. Harrow looked at her with raised eyebrows. You are in no position to make requests, orc. Nevertheless, I am making one. You said that Yorick is being exiled from this valley. You did not say he could not settle elsewhere in human lands. She took a breath. And you said that I would be executed if found on human lands again. But what if those lands were his? What if, as his wife, I lived on property that belonged to him? The magistrate frowned. That is a technicality. Perhaps, but you are a man of law, magistrate. Technicalities matter. Kara looked at Yorick, then back at Harrow. Yorick has made clear his wish to marry me. I accept his proposal. If we were to wed and settle on land in some distant place where our presence would not offend anyone, would that satisfy the law? Harrow stared at her, clearly torn between irritation and grudging respect. You are asking me to sanction a marriage between a human and an orc. I am asking you to sanction a marriage between two people who love each other and want only to live in peace, Kara said. Yorick has served your kingdom faithfully. I have committed no crime except existing. Surely that merits some small mercy. The magistrate turned to his advisors, and they conferred in low voices for several minutes. Finally, Harrow turned back to face the hall. Against my better judgment, I am inclined to allow this, but there are conditions. First, the marriage must be performed immediately tonight before you leave. Second, you must settle at least 50 miles from any established human village or town. Third, you will be subject to inspections by kingdom officials to ensure you are not harboring other orcs or engaging in any activity that could threaten human settlements. And fourth, any children born of this union will be considered wards of the kingdom and subject to our laws. The conditions were harsh, but Kara did not hesitate. I accept. Yorick nodded as well, as do I. Then it is settled. Harrow motioned to one of the officials. Fetch Brother Marcus. We will have this done tonight and they will be gone by dawn. Brother Marcus turned out to be a nervous, elderly priest who clearly did not approve of the proceedings, but was unwilling to defy the magistrate. He performed the ceremony with minimal ceremony, reading through the traditional words in a rushed monotone. There were no flowers, no celebration, no witnesses except for the magistrate and guards who watched with expressions ranging from disapproval to outright disgust. But when Brother Marcus asked if Yorick took Kara as his wife, Yorick looked into her eyes and said, "I do," with such conviction that it brought fresh tears to her eyes. And when she was asked the same question, Kara said, "I do," and meant it with every fiber of her being. They were allowed no kiss, no embrace. As soon as the final words were spoken, the guards moved in, separating them once more. You will be escorted separately to the border, the magistrate said. You may reunite there. You have 1 hour to gather your belongings from Dalton's farm under guard. Then you will leave this valley and not return. The next hour was a blur. Kara was taken back to the farm under heavy guard, allowed to gather the few belongings she had accumulated. Yorick arrived separately, his face grim as he loaded his wagon with tools, seeds, food supplies, and whatever else he could salvage from his home. The guards watched every movement, making sure they took nothing that was not theirs. As they worked, a few of the villagers who had gathered to watch the spectacle began to jeer. Someone threw a rock that struck Kara's shoulder. She ignored it, focusing on helping Yorick secure the wagon. "I am sorry," she whispered as they worked side by side. "I am so sorry. You have lost everything because of me." Yorick paused, turning to look at her fully. "I have lost a farm, but I have gained a wife. I think I got the better end of that bargain." Despite everything, Kara felt a smile tug at her lips. "You are insane." "Probably," he agreed. "But I am your insane husband now, for better or worse." When the wagon was loaded, they were escorted out of the valley along the southern road, a full contingent of armed riders surrounding them as if they were dangerous criminals. The journey took most of the night, and when they finally reached the border marker, the commander who had arrested them spoke for the first time since leaving the village. "This is as far as we go. Beyond this point, you are no longer our problem." He looked at Yorick. You were a good soldier once, Dalton. I hope whatever you think you are doing is worth throwing that away. Yorick met his eyes steadily. It is worth more than you could possibly understand. The commander shook his head and signaled to his men. They turned and rode back the way they had come, leaving Yorick and Kara alone in the darkness with a wagon full of belongings and an uncertain future. For a long moment, they simply stood there, listening to the sounds of the night. Then Yorick turned to her and held out his hand. Well, wife. Where should we go? Kara took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, and looked out at the dark landscape ahead. I do not know these lands, but I was told there are wild areas to the west, places where few humans settle because the land is hard to work. Perhaps we could find a place there. The harder the land, the fewer the neighbors, Yorick mused. That sounds about right for us. He climbed up onto the wagon bench and offered her a hand up. Come on then, let us find our new home. They drove through the remainder of the night and into the following day, stopping only to rest the horse and eat from their meager supplies. The land around them gradually changed, becoming rockier and more heavily forested. They saw no other travelers, no signs of human habitation. On the third day, they crested a hill and looked down into a valley that made them both pause. It was small, sheltered by steep hills on three sides, with a stream running through it. The land was rough, studded with rocks and covered in scrub, but there was potential there. Flat areas that could be cleared for planting, trees that could provide lumber, water that flowed year-round. What do you think? Yorick asked. Kara studied the valley, her mind already working through the possibilities. It will be hard work, harder than your farm in the village valley. I am not afraid of hard work, Yorick said. The question is, can you see us building a life here? Kara looked at him, at this human man who had given up everything to be with her, who had stood before hostile crowds and declared his love without shame. Could she see a life here? Yes. She could see it with startling clarity. A small house built with their own hands, fields carved from the wilderness. Perhaps someday children running through the grass. I can see it, she said softly. I can see our life here. Yorick grinned and snapped the reins, guiding the horse down into the valley. They chose a spot near the stream, where the ground was relatively flat, and there was a good view of the surrounding hills. Any approaching visitors would be spotted long before they arrived. That first night they slept in the wagon bed, wrapped in blankets and pressed close against the cold. Yorick held Kara in his arms, and she felt safer than she had since the night her clan cast her out. Thank you, she whispered into the darkness. For what? Yorick's voice was sleepy, warm. For choosing me, for standing up for me, for being willing to build this impossible life with me. His arms tightened around her. You do not need to thank me for loving you, Kara. It is the easiest thing I have ever done. She turned in his embrace so she could see his face in the moonlight. I love you, Yorick Dalton. I think I have loved you since that first night when you offered me food and shelter instead of violence. I love you too, he said, and kissed her gently. The kiss deepened, becoming more passionate, and Kara felt heat bloom in her chest and spread through her entire body. They made love for the first time there in the wagon bed, under the stars, with the sound of the stream providing a gentle backdrop. It was tender and careful, both of them learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure. Yorick treated her like something precious, his touches reverent, and Kara gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathless and smiling. Well, Yorick said, his voice full of satisfaction, that was definitely worth getting exiled for. Kara laughed, the sound startling her. When was the last time she had laughed like that, free and genuine? She could not remember. You are ridiculous, she said fondly. And you are beautiful, he replied, kissing the tip of her nose. They fell asleep wrapped in each other, and Kara dreamed of the future they would build together. The weeks that followed were filled with backbreaking labor. They cleared land, felling trees and hauling away rocks. Yorick's experience as a farmer guided them as they planned where to plant different crops, where to build the house, where to put a barn for the animals they hoped to eventually acquire. Kara's strength proved invaluable. She could lift and carry loads that would have taken Yorick 2 or 3 trips, could swing an axe for hours without tiring. Together, they made rapid progress, the valley slowly transforming under their efforts. They also learned to navigate married life, the small intimacies and occasional frustrations of sharing space and making decisions together. Kara discovered that Yorick had an annoying habit of leaving his boots exactly where she would trip over them. Yorick discovered that Kara was not a morning person, and that attempting conversation before she had eaten breakfast was a recipe for disaster. But they also discovered deeper joys. The comfort of waking up next to each other, the satisfaction of working side by side toward a common goal, the way a shared glance could communicate volumes, the simple pleasure of sitting together at the end of a long day, watching the sun set over their valley. By midsummer, they had completed a small but sturdy house. It was simple, just 2 rooms, but it was theirs. They had built it with their own hands, every board and nail a testament to their commitment to this new life. On the night they moved in, Yorick produced a bottle of wine he had been saving and 2 cups. "To our home," he said, raising his cup. "To our home," Kara echoed, and they drank. That night, they christened their new bed properly, and Kara felt a contentment settle over her that she had never experienced before. This was what home felt like. Not a clan or a village, but this person beside her, this place they had created together. Autumn brought the first test of their new life. They had planted late, and the harvest was modest, but it would be enough to see them through the winter if they were careful. Yorick hunted deer and rabbit, smoking and drying the meat for storage. Kara foraged for nuts and berries, her knowledge of wilderness survival serving them well. They also received their first inspection from kingdom officials. 2 men arrived on horseback, armed and suspicious, and spent an entire day searching the property and questioning them both. They found nothing amiss, no other orcs, no signs of anything illegal, but their manner made it clear that they hoped to find something to justify arresting them both. "You are living in violation of natural law," one of the inspectors said to Yorick as they prepared to leave. "A human and an orc. It is unnatural." "What is unnatural?" Yorick replied calmly, "is the amount of hatred you carry around. It must be exhausting." The inspector's face reddened, but he said nothing more, simply mounting his horse and riding away. After they left, Kara found Yorick standing at the edge of their cleared land, staring out at the forest. "That bothered you," she observed. "It did," he admitted. "Not because I doubt our choice, but because I hate that loving you is seen as a crime by so many people. You deserve better than that, better than hiding in a remote valley, better than being treated like a monster." Kara moved to stand beside him, taking his hand in hers. "I am not hiding. I am building a life with the man I love. And as for being treated like a monster, I have dealt with that my entire life, from both orcs and humans. But you have never treated me that way, not once. That is worth more than the good opinion of people who choose hatred over understanding." Yorick pulled her into an embrace. "How did I get so lucky?" "I ask myself the same question every day," Kara said. Winter came, and with it, isolation. Snow blanketed the valley, making travel nearly impossible. But their small house was warm and well-stocked, and they passed the long dark months in relative comfort. Yorick taught Kara to raid, painstakingly going through the few books he had managed to bring with him. Kara taught Yorick some of the orc language, and they amused themselves by having conversations where they each spoke their own tongue, learning to understand even when they could not speak. They made love frequently, finding new ways to bring each other pleasure, learning each other's bodies with an intimacy that went beyond the physical. And they talked, long conversations about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. One night, as they lay in bed with the fire burning low, Kara broached a subject that had been on her mind. "Yorick, the magistrate said that any children we have would be wards of the kingdom." "He did," Yorick agreed cautiously. "Do you want children?" He was silent for a moment, his hand absently stroking her hair. "I do, someday, but only if you want them too, and only if we can figure out how to keep them safe from people who would see them as abominations." "I want them," Kara said quietly. "I never thought I would. In the clan, children were raised communally, and I never felt the desire to bear any. But with you, I find myself imagining what they would look like, whether they would have your eyes or my strength." "They would be perfect," Yorick said with certainty, "because they would be ours." Kara smiled into the darkness. "Perhaps we should wait a while longer, until we are more established, until we are sure we can protect them." "Agreed," Yorick said, "but I like knowing that is part of our future." Spring returned, and with it, renewed energy. They expanded their fields, planted a larger variety of crops. Yorick traded with a traveling merchant for 2 goats and a few chickens, the beginning of their livestock. The valley bloomed with wildflowers, and Kara spent hours learning which ones were edible or medicinal. On a warm afternoon in late spring, almost exactly a year after they had first found this valley, Kara was working in the garden when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She tensed, reaching for the knife she now kept always at her belt, and moved to where she could see the path leading into the valley. But instead of kingdom inspectors, she saw a sight that made her heart stop. Orcs. 3 of them, heavily armed riding horses that had clearly been stolen from humans, and at their head, riding with the confidence of command, was someone she recognized, Throck, her childhood friend and training partner. Kara ran toward the house where Yorick was repairing the roof. "Yorick, we have visitors." "Orcs?" He scrambled down immediately, grabbing his bow. Together, they positioned themselves in front of the house as the 3 orcs rode into the clearing. Throck dismounted, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. Kara, standing shoulder to shoulder with a human, both of them armed and clearly prepared to defend their home. "Kara," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "We heard rumors, but I did not believe them. You are alive, and you are living with a human." "I am," Kara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is my husband, Yorick. We have built a life here. What do you want, Throck?" The other 2 orcs were staring at Yorick with undisguised hostility, hands on their weapons. But Throck raised a hand, signaling them to wait. "I am not here to fight," he said. "I am here because things have changed in the clan. Your father was killed 2 months ago in a raid. Your mother died of fever shortly after. The clan is in disarray, with different factions fighting for control." Kara felt a strange numbness at the news of her parents' deaths. She had been cast out, disowned, but they had still been her family. "I am sorry to hear that," she said quietly. "Some of us have begun to question the old ways," Throck continued. "Your cousin Mara especially. She has been speaking of your mercy to that human prisoner, saying that perhaps you were right to value individual conscience over blind obedience to clan law." He paused. "I have come to see for myself how you live, and to ask if what we heard is true, that you found a human willing to accept you." Kara glanced at Yorick, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She lowered her knife slightly. "It is true. Yorick offered me shelter when I had nothing, He has stood beside me when his own people condemned him for it. We have built a home here together." Throck studied them both, his expression unreadable. Finally, he turned to his companions. "Put away your weapons. We are guests here and we will behave as such." The other orcs reluctantly complied. Yorick lowered his bow but did not set it aside. "Will you share a meal with us?" Kara asked. "It is not much, but we have enough," Throck nodded. "We would be honored." The meal that followed was awkward and tense, but it happened. The 5 of them sat around the table Yorick had built, eating bread and cheese and dried meat, and slowly conversation began to flow. Throck asked questions about their life, about how they had met, about the challenges they faced. Kara and Yorick answered honestly, holding nothing back. And gradually, Kara saw Throck's expression shift from suspicion to something like wonder. "You truly care for each other," he said finally. "This is not some alliance of convenience. You love each other." "We do," Yorick confirmed. "More than I can adequately express in words." One of the other orcs, a young warrior named Gresh, spoke up. "How do you make it work? You are so different." "We are not as different as people think," Kara said. "We both want safety, purpose, companionship. We both value honesty and hard work. Yes, we come from different peoples with different traditions, but at our core we want the same things. And when those differences do cause conflict—" Gresh pressed. "We talk about it," Yorick said. "We listen to each other, we compromise. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it." As the sun set, Throck stood. "We should leave. We have a long ride back to the mountains." "You are welcome to stay the night," Kara offered. "The journey is safer in daylight." Throck shook his head. "Thank you, but no, we have taken enough of your hospitality." He looked at Kara directly. "I came here expecting to find you living in misery, perhaps held captive or deluded. Instead, I find you happy. Truly happy, in a way I never saw you in the clan. It has given me much to think about." "The old ways are not the only ways," Kara said. "There can be new paths if we are brave enough to walk them." "Perhaps," Throck said. He clasped her forearm in the traditional warrior's greeting. "You were always the bravest of us, Kara. I am sorry we did not see that sooner." The 3 orcs mounted their horses and rode out of the valley. Kara and Yorick stood together, watching until they disappeared from sight. "That was unexpected," Yorick said finally. "It was," Kara agreed. "But perhaps it is a sign. If Throck can question the old hatreds, maybe others can too." "One can hope," Yorick said and pulled her into an embrace. The summer passed peacefully, their second in the valley. The crops flourished, the animals multiplied, and their home became more comfortable with each small improvement they made. They saw no more visitors, orc or human, and gradually relaxed into the rhythm of their life. In the autumn, Kara discovered she was pregnant. The realization came slowly, with small changes to her body that she initially dismissed. But when her monthly bleeding failed to come twice in a row, she could no longer deny it. She was carrying Yorick's child. She told him one evening after dinner, simply and directly, "I am with child." Yorick froze, his cup halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down carefully and crossed to where she sat, kneeling before her and taking her hands in his. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a healer to confirm it." A slow smile spread across his face, lighting up his entire expression. "We are going to have a baby." "We are," Kara confirmed, and then she was laughing and crying at the same time as Yorick pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The pregnancy was not easy. Kara's orc constitution made her stronger than a human woman, but carrying a half-human child brought unexpected challenges. She was sick frequently in the early months, and as her belly grew, she found her balance affected in ways she had not anticipated. Yorick was attentive and devoted, taking on extra work to spare her, preparing foods that helped with the nausea, rubbing her aching back and feet in the evenings. He talked to the baby constantly, telling it stories about their valley, about the life they would build together. "Do you think it can hear me?" he asked one night, his hand spread across her swollen belly. "I think so," Kara said. "And I think it likes your voice. It always moves when you talk." True enough, the baby gave a strong kick against Yorick's palm and his face lit up with wonder. Winter set in before the baby came, and Kara worried constantly about what would happen when the time arrived. They had no healer, no midwife, no one to help if something went wrong. But Yorick had been present for the births of several animals, and Kara had learned some midwifery skills from the clan healers in her youth. They would have to rely on that and hope it was enough. The labor began on a cold night in midwinter, with snow falling soft and thick outside their windows. Kara's waters broke as she was preparing for bed, and she looked at Yorick with a mixture of fear and excitement. It is time. The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Yorick stayed with her throughout, holding her hand, wiping her brow, offering water and encouragement. Kara bore down when the contractions commanded it, drew breath when they eased, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Dawn was breaking when the baby finally emerged, sliding into Yorick's waiting hands with a rush of fluid and a thin, indignant wail. He laughed, tears streaming down his face as he carefully cleaned the infant and wrapped it in soft cloth. "A girl," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a daughter, Kara, a beautiful, perfect daughter." He placed the baby in Kara's arms, and she looked down at the tiny face, seeing a blend of both of them. The baby had Kara's green-tinged skin, though lighter than her mother's, and tiny nubs where tusks would eventually grow. But she had Yorick's gray eyes and delicate features. She was perfect. An impossible blending of two peoples, two worlds. "Hello, little one," Kara whispered. "Welcome to the world." The baby's eyes, unfocused but searching, seemed to fix on her face. Then a tiny hand escaped the blanket and wrapped around Kara's finger with surprising strength. Yorick sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Kara's shoulders, and together they marveled at the miracle they had created. "We need to name her," Kara said softly. "Do you have any ideas?" Yorick asked. Kara thought about it, her mind drifting through both orc and human naming traditions. Then it came to her, a name that felt right for this child who would bridge two worlds. "Asha," she said. "It is an old orc name. It means hope." Yorick smiled. "Asha Dalton, I love it. She is our hope for a better future, for a world where love matters more than hatred." "Asha," Kara repeated, trying it out. The baby made a small cooing sound, and they both laughed. The weeks that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Asha was a healthy baby with powerful lungs and a stubborn temperament she clearly inherited from both parents. She nursed well, grew quickly, and demanded attention constantly. Kara had never known she could love anything as much as she loved this tiny person. Every smile, every new sound, every small achievement filled her with fierce joy and fiercer protectiveness. She would do anything, face any danger to keep her daughter safe. Yorick was equally besotted. He spent hours just watching Asha sleep, talking to her, singing her songs from his childhood. He built her a cradle from the finest wood he could find, sanded and polished until it was silky smooth. When spring returned and Asha was 3 months old, they received another visit from kingdom inspectors. This time there were 3 of them, and they demanded to see the child immediately. Kara brought Asha out, her heart in her throat, and watched as the men examined her daughter with cold, assessing eyes. "Half-breed," one of them muttered. "Unnatural." "She is a baby," Yorick said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "She is innocent." "She is an abomination," the lead inspector said. However, The magistrate's ruling stands. As the child of Yorick Dalton, she is a ward of the kingdom and subject to our laws. We will be monitoring her development closely. If she shows any signs of aggression or orc savagery, she will be removed from your care. Kara pulled Asha close, her entire body tense with the need to protect. She is 3 months old. What savagery could she possibly display? Orc children develop differently than human children, the inspector said. We will be watching. They left shortly after, but the visit cast a shadow over the household. The threat was clear. If Asha showed any hint of being more orc than human, she would be taken from them. That night after Asha was asleep, Kara and Yorick held each other in the darkness. We will not let them take her, Yorick said fiercely. I do not care what we have to do. She is our daughter and she stays with us. I know, Kara whispered, but I am afraid, Yorick. What if she does develop more like an orc? What if her tusks come in early, or she shows the strength of my people before she is old enough to control it? They will use any excuse to take her. Then we will leave, Yorick said. We will go somewhere even more remote, somewhere they cannot find us. Or we will find a way to protect her here. But we will not surrender our child to people who see her as a monster. Kara drew strength from his certainty, even as fear continued to gnaw at her. They had built a good life here, but it was becoming clear that it might not be enough to keep their daughter safe. The answer came from an unexpected source. 2 months later, as summer bloomed across the valley, Kara was working in the garden with Asha sleeping in a sling against her chest when she heard horses approaching. Multiple horses. Her hand went to her knife, and she moved quickly toward the house to alert Yorick. But when the riders came into view, her breath caught. Orcs, at least a dozen of them, and at their head rode Thrak and Mara. Yorick emerged from the house, bow in hand, but Kara raised a hand to stop him. Wait, I know them. The orcs dismounted as they reached the clearing, and Mara stepped forward. She was older than Kara by several years, a skilled warrior and now apparently a leader. Cousin, Mara said formally, we come in peace, seeking parley. Then you are welcome, Kara replied, her mind racing. What brings you here? Mara's eyes fell on the baby sleeping against Kara's chest, and her expression softened. We heard you had a child, is it true? A human and orc child. It is true. This is my daughter, Asha. Several of the orcs moved closer to see, their expressions ranging from curiosity to wonder. Mara gently touched one of Asha's tiny hands. She is beautiful, Mara said softly. Then she straightened, her voice becoming formal again. Kara, much has changed since you were cast out. The old leadership is gone. Those of us who remain have been working to forge a new path for our people. We no longer wish to be defined solely by war and hatred. Kara's heart began to pound. What are you saying? I am saying that your exile is rescinded. You are welcome to return to the clan if you wish, and your human husband and child would be welcome as well under our protection. The words hung in the air, impossible and tempting. Kara looked at Yorick, who looked equally shocked. Why? Kara asked. Why this change? Because you were right, Thrak said, stepping forward. Mercy is not weakness. Compassion is not betrayal. We have spent generations locked in endless conflict with the humans, and it has brought us nothing but death and suffering. When I came here last year and saw how you lived, it planted a seed. What if there was another way? What if we could build peace instead of perpetuating war? Mara nodded. It has not been easy. Many of the older warriors resisted. But enough of us, especially among the younger generation, were ready for change. We have reached out to some of the human settlements, proposed truces. Not all have been receptive, but some have. We are building something new, Kara, and we want you to be part of it. You who had the courage to show mercy when it cost you everything. Kara felt tears streaming down her face. For so long she had been alone, cast out from her people, and now they were offering her a way back, not just for herself but for her family, but she had to be sure. What of Yorick? And Asha? Would they truly be safe among the clan? They would be under my personal protection, Mara said, and Throx, and many others who have sworn to this new path. I will not lie to you, cousin. There will be those who resist, who see your husband as an enemy and your daughter as an abomination, but they would be a minority, and we would not allow them to cause harm. Yorick spoke for the first time. This is Kara's choice. I will support whatever she decides. Kara looked down at Asha, then around at the valley they had built with their own hands. She loved this place, but it was isolated, vulnerable. The kingdom inspectors would keep coming, keep threatening to take Asha, and they would be alone, always alone, against a world that hated them. With the clan, they would have community, protection. Asha would grow up knowing both sides of her heritage, would have others like her to learn from and bond with. Can we have time to think about this? Kara asked. Of course, Mara said, but do not take too long. The offer may not stand indefinitely. Politics among the clan are still volatile. The orcs departed, promising to return in 1 month for Kara's answer. After they left, Kara and Yorick sat together, Asha between them, and talked long into the night. I never expected this, Kara admitted. I thought I would be clanless forever. What do you want to do? Yorick asked. I do not know. This place is our home. We built it together. But the threat from the kingdom inspectors is real. They could take Asha at any time and we would have no recourse. With the clan we would have protection, Yorick said slowly. But I would be the outsider, the human among orcs, just as you were the outsider here among humans. Would that bother you? Yorick considered it. Honestly, I do not know, but I think I could bear it if it meant keeping Asha safe. And if it meant you could be reunited with your people. They talked for hours more, weighing the options, considering every angle. Finally, as dawn began to break, they reached a decision. When Mara returned a month later, Kara was waiting. We will come, she said, but on one condition. Yorick and I want to help build these bridges between humans and orcs. We want our story shared. Our experience used to show both peoples that peace is possible. We want Asha to grow up in a world that is better than the one we inherited. Mara smiled. That is exactly what we were hoping you would say. The journey back to the mountains took several days. Kara rode with Asha, while Yorick drove their wagon loaded with their belongings. The clan warriors who escorted them were respectful, if somewhat reserved around Yorick. But there was no hostility, and several of them made efforts to speak with him, to learn about his experiences. When they finally reached the clan lands, Kara felt a complicated tangle of emotions. This was the place that had formed her, shaped her, then cast her out. Now she was returning, changed, with a family that would have been unthinkable when she left. The clan had changed too. The Great Hall was still there, but the atmosphere was different. Less rigid, less dominated by the harsh military discipline she remembered. Children played more freely. Conversations were louder, more animated. Mara had arranged for them to have their own dwelling, a small but comfortable house on the edge of the main settlement. It gave them privacy while still being part of the community. That first evening, there was a feast to welcome them. Kara stood before the assembled clan, Yorick beside her and Asha in her arms, and told her story. She spoke of the mercy she had shown to the human prisoner, of her exile, of finding Yorick and building a life with him. She spoke of the love they had found, the family they had created, and the hope that their daughter represented. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then someone began to clap, then another, and another, until the entire hall was filled with the sound of applause. Orcs celebrating not war or violence, but love and hope and the courage to change. Yorick was surrounded by curious orcs asking questions about human customs, farming techniques, his experiences as a soldier. He answered patiently, honestly, and Kara watched with pride as he handled himself with grace and dignity. Over the following weeks and months, they settled into their new life. It was not without challenges. Some of the older warriors did resent Yorick's presence, and there were a few tense moments. But Mara's authority held, and gradually, most of the clan came to accept him. Ashath thrived, growing strong and healthy. She learned to walk early, showing the physical prowess of her orc heritage, but she also showed her father's patience and gentleness. She became a beloved figure in the clan, a symbol of the new path they were forging. Kara and Yorick worked tirelessly to build bridges between the clan and nearby human settlements. It was slow, difficult work. There were setbacks and failures, but there were also successes. Trade agreements were reached. Disputes were settled through mediation rather than violence. Slowly, very slowly, old hatreds began to erode. 3 years after their return to the clan, Kara found herself pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and when their son was born, strong and healthy with Yorick's dark hair and Kara's green skin, they named him Kieran, which meant peace in the old orc tongue. Yorick held his son and looked at Kara with wonder. 2 children. 2 beautiful, impossible children. "We are building quite a family. We are building quite a world," Kara corrected him. "One where our children can grow up free from the hatreds that defined our generations." "It is not perfect yet," Yorick observed. "No," Kara agreed, "but it is better. And it will keep getting better, as long as we keep working at it." That evening, they sat outside their home, watching Ashath play with other clan children while Kieran slept peacefully in Kara's arms. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold. Yorick took Kara's hand, lacing their fingers together. "Do you ever regret it, showing mercy to that prisoner?" Everything that came after, Kara thought about it, about all she had lost and all she had gained. Her clan, her family, her entire world had been upended by that single choice. But it had led her here to this moment, with a husband she loved deeply, children who were the light of her life, and a purpose that gave meaning to every day. "No," she said firmly. "I regret nothing. That moment of mercy led me to you, to our children, to this life we have built. It was the beginning of everything that matters." Yorick lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just as he had that first night when they acknowledged their feelings for each other. "I love you, Kara, more than words can express. I love you too, Yorick, always." As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Kara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had been cast out for showing mercy, for refusing to let hatred dictate her actions. That choice had cost her everything she knew, but it had given her something far more valuable, a life built on love, a family that bridged 2 worlds, and hope for a future where mercy and compassion could triumph over ancient enmities. It had not been easy. The path ahead would not be easy either. But as she sat there with her husband and children, surrounded by a community that had learned to choose peace over perpetual war, Kara knew with absolute certainty that every struggle had been worth it. The orc who had been disowned for mercy had found a farmer who understood. And together, they had built not just a home, but a bridge between 2 peoples. Their love story had become a testament to the power of compassion, the courage to choose differently, and the hope that even the deepest divisions could be healed, one act of kindness at a time. The future stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. And Kara faced it with her hand in Yorick's, ready for whatever came next, secure in the knowledge that together, they could overcome anything. Their love had survived exile, prejudice, and the weight of history itself. It would continue to thrive, a beacon of hope in a world learning slowly, imperfectly but genuinely, to choose understanding over hatred and peace over war.